What is up, family? Welcome back to the channel. We have a quick video for you guys today, recapping all of the doings that happened in Ashburn today. Today is day what? I done lost track. We in the dog days of the summer, and since the team went to New England, they done took a couple of days off. They've had a couple of walkthrough days. I done lost track about how many days into training camp the Commanders are in. But Linnell Willingham said that today is day 13. So I know Linnell is a little polarizing topic amongst the Commander community, but we're going to take him at his word today, and we're going to call this the day 13 of Commanders training camp recap. And I was curious to see how today was going to go. I was honestly curious to see how today was going to go, because this was the first practice that we had since the New England Patriots put belt to ass to us. They gave us that good old BTA, and they served us some humble pie with a 30-point loss, with us losing 18-48 a couple of days ago. And while it's just preseason and you don't want to take too much out of it, and you want to take some of the things that you saw with a grain of salt, I did like what I heard from Dan Quinn. While he said, no, I'm pissed off. We didn't live up to the standard. And that's honestly what I saw from the guys that were on the field yesterday or on Friday, excuse me. Yeah, you can take the fact that there weren't our top 30 players didn't dress, and you can consider that when you're talking about the totality of everything. But when you step back and look at it from a macro point of view, this Friday's game showed me that this roster is still 1.5 years into a rebuild, that Jaden Daniels just so happened to accelerate because he's that uber talented, and he's that talented of a guy. And I've said it since we drafted Jaden over a year and a half ago. Elite quarterback play is the greatest cologne in the NFL. It's the greatest deodorant in the NFL because it can mask a lot of things, like holes that you have on the roster. And I'm not necessarily saying that we have a lot of holes on this roster, but this roster isn't super deep. I made a tweet the other day where I said that I believe that barring Marcus Mariota's health, the quarterback room and the cornerback room are the only rooms that I would consider deep with talent, and the talent runs deep in those rooms. Yeah, we got a lot of numbers in the defensive tackle room, right? And if Johnny Newton keeps up that momentum that he had coming off of preseason week 1, where he had a strip sack and things of that nature, we can potentially put the defensive tackle room into that conversation. But Javon Kinlaw is still far from a proven commodity in this league. While I think that a lot of people have made a much to do about nothing with his annual average value that he signed with that $15 million a year contract. Because if you look back, you can see that is like tier 3 defensive tackle money. And I think that he has the potential to get there, but I wouldn't say that the defensive tackle room is fully loaded. So those are the synopsises that I got out of, Friday's game. Couldn't take too much out of it. Especially with some of the guys that I wanted to look at, essentially like Luke McCaffrey, Ben Sinnott, and Jalen Lane. Ben Sinnott had a couple of good reps. Luke was sick, but when you have Sam Hartman having a hard time getting the receivers the balls and things of that nature, you have a hard time to evaluate it. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt shot in his reps. The only thing that I didn't like from Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt is the fact that he went out with a shoulder injury. But to hear that he was back at practice today was super exciting. So that's what I took out of Friday's game. And like I said, I was interested to see how today's practice went, because knowing when I played football back in the good old days, back in Little League, whenever we got BTA belt to put the ass like that and lost by 30 points, you knew we was running and tackling the next practice. Now, I know in the NFL, they're protected by something called the CBA and the collective bargaining agreement. But if you watch the watch party live stream that we did of the Commanders and the New England Patriots, I said, I'm curious to see how the next practice in Ashburn is going to go. Because not saying that it's Camp J. I'm not saying that by any means, because I have talked about how efficient and how quickly, Dan Quinn practices have moved. But I'll be lying if I didn't, raise my eyebrow and question if other NFL teams were practicing longer than us. Because every session that I've been to this year, none of them have been over 90 minutes. None of them have lasted even 90 minutes. I don't think any of them have been over 75 minutes And it was just something that I questioned. And then when you see second, third, and fourth stringers struggle, those questions that you had when you were observing training camp, in my from my perspective and from my point of view, kind of arose a little bit. But like I said, it's only preseason. You can only take it with a grain of salt. But man, enough of me rambling. Let's get into all the doings from Ashburn today. Let's see if these boys was really hitting and tackling. I need a good old Oklahoma drill. I need a good old nutcracker drill. If you really know ball and you really played football, y'all know. I need them to run some hills. I need to run them hills that Darryl Green was running years ago, or running trails that Sean Taylor used to run when he was going home, because that performance was unacceptable. So let's see what they actually did, because we know they didn't do that, because that collective bargaining agreement is ironclad, and this ain't 05. It's 2025. So let's see what they actually did in Ashburn today. So, we always start practice with a pre-practice press conference from Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn said Lucas Niang tore his ACL in Friday's preseason loss to the Patriots. That's unfortunate to hear. This was a guy that we signed about a week ago, and I didn't think he had a strong chance of making the roster, but I think he had a decent chance of fighting during the course of this preseason to solidify that, 9th or 10th offensive lineman that we can potentially have. This is a guy that was a decently high draft pick at one point in his career. And I think he would have elevated the, deep end of that offensive line room and that offensive tackle room. I'm not saying that he was going to come in and replace Lermy Tunsil or Josh Connolly by any means, but he's a nice big body that was once a promising prospect and never essentially lived up to the hype. But to see that he was the blood sacrifice for the offseason, I hate to hear that. I hate to hear that. But to be honest, if we know football and we know the NFL offseason and how training camp sessions go over the duration of the summer, every NFL team has at least one blood sacrifice. And hopefully, and I'm not saying this, praising his injury, but hopefully it's just Lucas Niang, right? Hopefully it's just a play of Lucas Niang's caliber and we don't sustain any other injuries. We got 2 more preseason games to go and a couple of weeks of, I think training camp is actually over. I think now it's just normal practice now. And a couple of weeks of practice before the regular season. So the biggest objective of training camp is to keep as many guys as healthy from training camp. So to hear that I don't want to say only Lucas Niang, but to hear that he was the only one that suffered a season-ending injury, I guess you can call that a positive that it wasn't a player of, higher caliber, but you never want to see a guy to get hurt. Dan Quinn said he really likes the safety group, not just from what they do on defense, but also because of their special teams contributions. And I'm curious to see what they do on special teams, because we saw what that kickoff coverage looked like. And to hear him point out the safety room and emphasize the safety room was interesting, because I was boots on the ground, Northwest Stadium. I even tweeted about it last year. Tyler Owens and Percy Butler were indeed demons on special teams last year. And, those guys were on those coverage units on Friday that were piss poor. We had Antonio Gibson running like it was 2020 on kick returns. That shows you how piss poor the kickoff coverage is. So, to hear him emphasize that group, I don't know if he's separating them from the rest of the guys that didn't do their assignments on those kickoff coverages, but that was interesting to hear him say. DQ said the team watched the kickoff coverage film from Friday night and made it clear that it wasn't up to standard. I like to be a fly on the wall for that one, for that film session, or maybe not, said JP Finley. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if he wanted to be a fly on the wall in that one. It was probably a whole bunch of F-bombs, whole bunch of P-bombs. If you know, you know. By Larry Izzo and Dan Quinn, because that was piss poor. That was piss poor film that was put out there by those special team coverage units on Friday. Dan Quinn said the Commanders will work out a number of players today. Didn't specify. Yeah, so this was a couple of hours ago, and there was actually a player that did actually end up signing as a result of the workouts today. Hopefully we'll get a chance to touch on it by the end of this episode. Dan Quinn was asked if they thought about bringing in a second kicker for competition with Matt Gay. Fair question, but that's not where we're at. Well, I'm glad that you acknowledge that it's a fair question, Dan. I'm glad that you acknowledge that, because you got to understand, in this Washington community, we've been scored by kickers, bro. We've been scored by kickers. And for Matt Gay, for his first impression to be a missed, manageable, makeable field goal, yeah, that scarred a little bit of us. We started having a lot of PTSD coming back. I started seeing Saban Ahmed, flashbacks. And who else? Who else have we had Dicker the Kicker flashbacks and Chris Blewett flashbacks. Like I was having real bad flashbacks when I saw Matt Gay not attempt that. So I'm glad I missed that attempt. So I'm glad that you acknowledged it as a fair question, Dan. And for somebody that preaches competition, I'm gonna give Matt Gay one more week. I'm gonna give him one more week, but then we're gonna start having to maybe compete because I always thought it was asinine to give him the most guaranteed money that a NFL kicker ever signed on a contract. It's not like he's had that proven pedigree of a career. Solid kicker, but not highest kicker in the NFL type money. And to see him miss that first kick as his initial impression, then adore him to the Washington fan base, to say the least. So we're still talking about the kicker. Quinn said he has seen real confidence from Jalen Lane returning punts. Yeah, that's something I noticed from the game the other day. I was like, buddy is not fair catching that ball. Buddy's not fair catching that ball, which I get excited about because with the type of athlete Jalen Lane is, you want the ball in his hands as many times as possible. Quinn said, I am certain will look different than what we showed on Friday. They better. Because like I said on the stream, I know that the games are on two opposite ends of the spectrum as far as, the value of the game and how much they mean. I know they're on two opposite ends of the spectrum, but step back and take a macro look at it. 2 back-to-back 30-point losses isn't good for my fanhood soul. It's not essential for my fanhood soul. I'm sorry. I started having flashbacks on Friday night of me staring at the wall for 3 hours after the NFC Championship game. I just didn't cry this time because I knew it was preseason. Time to bring in competition. They still talking about how many questions we gonna ask about Matt Gay? God damn. Like I'm mad he missed the kick too, but like damn, we got other things to worry about. Quinn provided no other injury update. Said they have a better idea for Tuesday about plans for the various injured players. So remember last week, Jordan McGee. Who else? Jordan McGee, Brandon Coleman, Javonte Jean-Baptiste were amongst the names that didn't join in the New England Patriot joint practice session. So I'm curious to see if it's reported if they were out there on the field today. Ja'Cory Bill, Krosky Merritt, and Luke McCaffrey are out here. Both left Friday's game early. Like I said, looked like Bill nicked up his shoulder a bit, but they said that he's back out in practice. Luke McCaffrey as well is a positive sign. Because both guys, especially Luke, and you know what I mean by this when I say this, both guys need as many reps as they can get. So to hear Luke was able to bounce back from whatever illness he had pretty fast is a positive sign. What else we got here? Talking about Terry McLaurin. Commanders not at practice today. Noah Brown, Brandon Coleman, Jordan McGee, Javonte Jean-Baptiste, Kevon Seymour, Guilherme Fehoko, and Bobby Price. I saw Price, Seymour, and Fehoko get injured in the game. So I'm curious to see what, comes. Dan Quinn said he was going to talk about it tomorrow, so I'm curious to see what he says about them tomorrow. Brandon Coleman, Jordan McGee, Javonte Jean-Baptiste. I talked about it on the stream. These are 3 second-year players that all had their rookie years derailed by injury by some extent, some more drastic than others. So to hear that they're missing yet another practice, especially like Jordan McGee, bro, I really don't want to put you in Keenan Robinson waters and Reuben Foster waters, bro. But you're treading in those waters, and I need you to start treading lightly and get back on that field. Because I saw the talent last year at Ashburn. You just ain't been healthy since. Our guy Linnell Winningham said, hell of a block from Jalen Lane on the DEEBO jet sweep. Had Quan yoked up. So to hear that and hear how that's just a vast improvement from him getting blown up from Mikey Sanders still in one of the first days of training camp just shows that the game is slowing down. He's getting acclimated to the physicality of the NFL. And the stock is up for Jalen Lane, in my opinion. That's why I really wanted him to get some burn and get some touches on Friday, but we had that insurance agent, Sam Hartman, at quarterback. Team running 11 on 11 drills. Really nice block by Eckler and Lane to help DEEBO get open. I think that's probably the lane that was talking about. He's getting plenty of work with the first team. Marshawn with a good pass. So he must be talking about Jalen Lane. But he said Marshawn Lattimore with a good pass breakup on a pass intended from Lane from 5. Good pass breakup by Marshawn Lattimore. So Marshawn Lattimore, he heard all them Patriot fans talking about how Kayshon Boutte torched him, how Tayshaun Boutte beat him up, even though the video Marshawn Lattimore's walking him back 10 yards. Like, Marshawn Lattimore has to understand that he's put together quite the career, and he's established such a name at the cornerback positions that, you know, like, they looking at him like fish in the water, like what is it? Prey in the water right now. They're looking at him like prey in the water right now because they saw how his season ended last year, and they're looking to make their name on making a play on former All-Pro cornerback Marshawn Lattimore. He has to understand that, and I don't think we're ever going to get peak prime Marshawn Lattimore. It'd be foolish to think that we're going to get that from a 29-year-old corner. But if he can start doing things like this and impacting the game and making pass breakups and give us 85% of the elite uber talent that he once was, this defense is going to another level. So to hear that he had the day-to-day, hear that he had a day-to-day is a positive sign, to say the least. Matt Gay just went through live kicks, went 4 or 5. I'm gonna need you to go 5 for 5, bro. After missing your first kick as a Washington Commander, I'm gonna need you to go 5 for 5. Is that asking for too much? And then here for the misses from 38 yards. My temper is short. My temper is short for Matt Gay. My temper is short for all kickers, but then when you go out and miss the first kick after signing the biggest contract for a kicker, like, nah, my patience is thin. But like I said, I'm gonna give him a week. Y'all. So our guy Jack Selby said first pass of the day from Daniels on 7-on-7, DEEBO touchdown. The second pass is DEEBO touchdown. I'll be back, y'all. I might have to go change my shorts. I'm so bricked up right now. Like, that's why we got to take the results from Friday. Take some things out of it, but take a lot of it with a grain of salt. DEEBO Samuel wasn't out there. DEEBO Samuel and Jaden Daniels wasn't out there. And they showed you that collection has been alive all offseason since training camp has started. I told you, what's the over-under for DEEBO Samuel touchdowns this year? I think it's only 7.5 in Vegas. I'm willing to put it up to 9.5. I might ladder it up to 10, make some real money. Because Jaden and DEEBO have showed you that they've had a connection from day one. I don't know if it's a West Coast thing. I don't know if Brandon Ayuk is giving Jaden some tips on how DEEBO like to run routes, his pace, his timing, and things of that nature. But 1 and 5 have scored a lot of sixes this training camp session. Shit, we saw the catch that he had against the New England Patriots. So no, I don't want to go into 2025 with DEEBO Samuel as my wide receiver number 1, but it might not be as bad as we thought a couple of weeks ago. It might not be, and it's starting to look like that possibility is getting more and more realistic as the days go by and we don't sign Terry McLaurin. Really nice work by Amos to end practice. Damn, practice over that fast? Quick practice. I guess they didn't do no tackling. No Oklahomas. No nutcrackers. Pause. Really nice work by Amos to end practice. Daniels delivered a throw to Luke in the back of the end. I know Luke McCaffrey see Trey Amos in his nightmares every night. Trey Amos been clapping him since the first day of camp. Trey Amos been clapping the shit out of Luke. That's why I was so glad to see Amos make that play or Matt Collins in the game the other day, because I'm like, bro, you strapping Luke, and I'm glad that you're strapping. You've been strapping all camp. But I need somebody other than Nepo baby Luke McCaffrey. Like, I need somebody other than tall Chris Hogan. Like, I think Chris Hogan. I need somebody other than modern Chris Hogan. Like, and to see that he's still answering the bell. Trey Amos is a stud. Chill is a stud. He got that athletic arrogance that I look for and I need in my cornerbacks. He ain't get exposed in his first joint practice session like or another former Washington first-round cornerback draft pick, Emmanuel Forbes. So short practice session today. Ja'Cory Krosky, Merritt, and Luke McCaffrey were back out there, though. 7 players were working out, had a workout. And let's see, was there anybody that actually signed after that workout? Jaden Daniels spoke. Said that he loves playing football, but he didn't make the decision on him not playing in preseason. I believe that Jaden Daniels doesn't need a snap of preseason football. But, to see Joe Burrow go out there and slice up the Philadelphia Eagles like a hot knife through butter, I want to see that duel for, even if I get it for a drive between Jaden and Joe Burrow on Monday Night Football week 2 of the preseason. Jaden Daniels target receivers, and if he will need time to ramp up with Terry and Noah Brown. I can control what I can control. Okay, Jada, who normally gives us the most PC answer as possible, and I'm not saying that this answer isn't a super PC, but I think he's acknowledging like, yeah, I can control what I can, but I would like if these guys were on the field contributing. Like I can control what I can, but I'm gonna need them to do their parts as well. Jaden Daniels on Laramie Tunsil. I love him to death. Of course, he's gonna be protecting your blind side. He was dominating against the New England Patriots, and Jaden saw what's to come for this season and said, "Oh yeah, I love this guy to death. That's my personal protector." So here were the guys that the Commanders ultimately worked out. Defensive lineman Amari Barno and Jeremiah Martin. Defensive back is Sang Bassi, Antonio Hamilton, Kenny H. Lovely. That's an interesting name. Offensive line, Lester Crichton, John LeGlue, Tayshawn Manning, and linebackers Nick Morrow, Tanner Muse, Ronnie Perkins, Duke Riley, Sion Taki, Sion Taki. Okay, there's some names on this bunch. And O'Shea Jimenez. Is that the former Giants high draft pick? I know he was ass coming out of Old Dominion, though. No shade to my ODU fans out there. So was there anybody? So I'm hearing that Marshawn Lattimore had a really good day at camp. We already touched on that. And I'm glad that he made the play on Jalen Lane, because Jalen Lane is a speed demon. His speed pops out on tape. It pops in person when I've seen him being boots on the ground in Ashburn. So to hear that he made that play, I'm curious to see if it was a vertical route, because that showed me that Sean can still run a little bit. Like that hammy's intact. That hammy might be intact. And then Adam Schefter, less than an hour ago, reported that the Commanders actually are signing former Dolphins linebacker Duke Riley. Like he said, former Dolphins, former Atlanta Falcon linebacker out of LSU. A guy that had a lot of hype coming out of college and didn't necessarily live up to that. Duke Riley's probably more known for his Triller videos that he used to do with Odell Beckham back in the day, like way back in the day. You got to be a real football fan to remember those from about 10 years ago when he was at LSU. But to see that we signed an off-ball linebacker, it tells me a couple of things. It tells me that this can potentially be somebody that can help on those kickoff coverages, and we're looking for guys to help us on kickoff coverages. And why wouldn't we after that putrid performance that we let out on Friday night? And then the other thing is that it perks my ears up a little bit, because being that this is an off-ball linebacker, like Duke Riley's not pass rushing. This can't be the greatest of news for Jordan McGee and Dom Hampton for two different reasons, for very different reasons. Jordan McGee is simply injury reasons. Duke Riley isn't better than Jordan McGee in 2025. But if Jordan McGee isn't available, your best ability is availability. So if he isn't available, I think that this might be, injury insurance for the off-ball linebacker position. And then a guy like Dom Hampton, I think it's just a talent purpose. This is for talent purposes. At this point, I don't expect Dom Hampton to make the final 53. He might be a good practice squad candidate, but I think he's getting outplayed by Jordan McGee, outplayed by Kane Medrano. And I honestly, y'all know when I did the recap video of the 2024 draft, I never had the highest hopes for Dom Hampton. This was a guy that wasn't really a decent player in college until his fifth year. Never really making an impact until his fifth year. Then he got on a good team, made his name a little bit, and got drafted. So more power to him, but I think the light at the end of the tunnel might not be as bright as he once hoped it was, and what once was for our guy Dom Hampton. But that'll do it. Recapping day 13 of Commanders training camp. First practice since getting belt put to ass to us. To hear some guys making plays that are actually going to impact games on Sunday, like a DEEBO Samuel and a Marshawn Lattimore, was exciting to hear. To hear Jaden Daniels talk was exciting to hear as well. I think it's another light day tomorrow, so we'll see how much news we get out of camp tomorrow to determine if I need to do a video or not. But that'll do it for day 13. I appreciate y'all checking in, and I'll check in on y'all on the flip side. Peace.